everyone. I am Ying, and I'm a lecturer at the University of Sydney. So as Chen Zhuo has introduced me, so I'm from the School of Education and Social Work at University of Sydney, and I'm interested, my research area is in citizenship education. So today the title of my presentation will be on rethinking civic education in the digital era, using Singapore as a case and as a context to examine the potential of social media in helping students to learn about engagement, civic engagement in particular. So before I start, I thought I'll just spend a bit of time to give you the context of this project, just so that you can better appreciate, what we're trying to find out in this project. So this presentation is based off a larger project, which is called the Mediation of Civic Learning by Digital Social Media. And we actually, at the end, we hope to be able to do a Singaporean-Australian comparison. So like I have said, I'm from FASS at the University of Sydney, the School of Education and Social Work. So main part of my work deals with helping pre-service teachers to have that competencies to go and work at schools. But we are also working with Wei Yi at NUS, who is working at the Department of Communications and New Media. So because of our combination of expertise, before I start, I thought I will make the distinction between education and schooling. So like I said, although part of my job is really to work with pre-service teachers to prepare them for working in school, this idea of schooling is pretty much confined within the learning space of schools, whereas education is a much broader concept which can take place across many, many different learning spaces, such as social media. So in this presentation, I will be using the word education more than schooling, because I'm taking a broader view of education. So to underpin, my discussion about education, I'd just like to perhaps acknowledge the fact here that education is never a neutral process. In other words, it is always value laden, and it always represents something that is valuable, and we do things or we carry out education in a certain way to achieve certain purposes. So what is the implication for education, for civic engagement then? I guess, literature on civic learning and civic engagement has consistently talked about these two key concepts. The first one is the dynamism that is inherent in our society, which should ideally be reflected in education. And the second thing is that it is, this idea of transformation is more or less sort of expected, that education will transform when societies transform. So I guess the key question here will be transform in what directions? Like I said, taking a broad view of education, we see that civic spaces extends beyond the school. In various parts of the society. School is one civic learning space. Social media is one civic learning space. There could be other learning spaces, such as social interactions, such as through different media outlets, and such as students or youth participation in different interest groups. So I guess when we talk about education, we have to come back to the key question. When we say transform, when we say that education is going to be dynamic, we have to perhaps have a clear understanding of what the goals are. So in this case, like when Ben said in the earlier, he views the importance of people having to give back to the society. There are also many ways of giving back to the society. So I guess it is that the appreciation of the complexity of what education do that makes our research interesting. So here I would like to draw on Biesta's work that looks at the 3 key dimensions of the purpose of education. I won't go into detail, but just very briefly talk about this idea of the complexities of education. When we say volunteering, we can volunteer for many purposes. When we say giving back to the society, there are many ways of giving back to the society. So the first purpose, the first dimension of looking at education is this idea that education serves the purpose of, qualification, which is very, very utilitarian, to get students to have the competencies to do something. It could be voting, to be able to, work in the society, to contribute to the economy. The second one is socialization. We all have social norms. In all societies, there will be social norms. So it's about equipping students with the competencies to be able to participate in that established norms. The third one is actually the most controversial because it requires the preparation of youth or young people to sort of question the status quo and also to move out of that comfort zone or to challenge what is existing. And that requires actually critical thought and the ability to examine the root causes of social issues. And it could be even challenging the concept of what equity is about or what social justice is about. So yeah, I guess subjectification is the one that is most controversial, most debated, and most resisted. Yeah. So I guess in this study, as I present the results shortly, it is important to make our conceptualization of civic education very clear, because like I said, there are different purposes. When we say volunteering, when we say civic engagement, there are many, many different types. So in this paper, we conceptualize civic education as having to shift from a focus of qualification and socialization to something that is more, that serves more of the purpose of subjectification, where students will be able to appreciate diversity, which is an inevitable phenomenon in all societies now, with globalization and technological advancement. And that we see social media as a learning space for citizens or for individuals to engage with knowledge and information, and then to help them with informed decision-making about how they would like to participate in the society. So I guess the key thing that I'd like to emphasize here is engagement. It's not just passive taking in of knowledge, but to engage and use that knowledge to consider their roles in the society. So I just guess I will, in this presentation, I aim to answer one key question. What are Singaporean youth perspectives of civic-mindedness in the digital era within the context of Singapore, which is non-Western? What are some of the opportunities and what are some of the challenges? So going directly to this question, okay. Yeah, there is some consensus among the participants about what civic-mindedness means. To them, civic-mindedness means making societies better. And this often means abiding by the rules, abiding by the laws, and abiding by the social norms. And that is considered by them good behavior. So again, I would like to bring back to what I said earlier. There are different layers, there are nuances to what we understand by making societies better, or this notion of giving back to the society. So among the participants, we see that there are actually diverse views as well about what civic-mindedness means. For example, even though many of them talk about that, civic-mindedness means contributing to the community, to act in the community's interest. There are many, many different interpretations of what it can mean. So for example, there are participants who view that contributing to the community aligns more with the subjectification purpose of education. This means this includes actions like voicing their opinions, keeping political or institutions in general accountable, signing petitions to champion a cause, boycotting or canceling. But at the same time, we've got other participants in this study who says that, such acts of subjectification can institute divide, can infringe on the rights of the minorities, or such actions, actions of subjectification can digress from the social cause in question. So, like I said, subjectification is probably the most controversial and most debated purpose of education. And our participants also have mixed feelings about being civic. The positive feelings associated with civic-mindedness is they're heartened to see that people are championing causes. They see it as something good, and see it as something good in that it helps to move beyond the thinking about self to the society. Well, also, however, there are people who are actually who don't feel as positive about being civic-mindedness. For example, they express feelings of skepticism, feelings of frustration, and they view the diversity of views that are present in the society as leading to pressure and confusion. Yeah, so these are the key findings that we found from the data that we've collected. So going directly to the question now, so what are the opportunities presenting that can present social media as a civic learning space? Now, firstly, we see that the participants do have a basic understanding of civic concepts of, say, agency, diversity, and equity. So this can serve as a shared moral foundation to start supporting civic understanding. Secondly, I guess, although it is not specifically mentioned as politics, I guess the participants also show awareness of politics where, it's not talking about political parties, but this idea that, in social issues, there will be competing interests. There may be, one-sided views, and there may be a discrepancies between reality and the ideal, and the pressure that they have as someone in a position to make decisions from the society. Yeah, and the third one would be, there are opportunities. Is it 50 minutes?
Yeah, no, I mean, could you please wrap up the talk in 5 minutes? So.
Okay, 5 minutes, sure. I will finish. This is the second last slide. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, great. So yeah, it presents the opportunity for the students to exercise, for youth to exercise agency, because they can see the relationship between participation and social agency. Yeah, and even though they may express negative feelings such as frustration or pressure or skepticism, it also shows that they are concerned about what's happening around them. So these are all good starting points for exercising civic agency. Yeah, so very quickly, the challenges is that the participants show very limited critical thought about civic participation. So I draw connection back to the idea where they see civic-mindedness as adhering to existing laws. So they see the idea of challenging social norms as the possibility of threatening social harmony, which is seen as superior to actually deliberation. They have quite a constrained view of citizenship, where again, like I said, social harmony, the idea of harmony is superior to, say, disagreement. And I guess it shows the tension between schooling and education, because what we're doing in schools may contradict what is needed for transformative. I promise this is the last slide. Okay, 3 minutes. Okay, so going back to the question, what is the role that social media can play. Firstly, it is a space for engagement. It can complement or supplement some of the political sort of conservative political climate and schooling practices in Singapore. So provide a space for more critical engagement, and that it also provide a space to consider the diversity of opinions in the society. Yeah, so I'm